Hey everyone, welcome here. Top Shelf, my name's Colin and this is Nick. We've been strong supporters from day one, since Origins, really up until now, and we recently have our Riftbound Masters event not too long ago. Just had a call with Riot and UVS Games, and things seem to be shaping up very nicely. Nick here as one of our Riftbound ambassadors has been honestly instrumental in sort of the growth of the community. We want to maintain sort of like that kind of community, lighthearted, casual vibe, but also be able to turn the switch and turn competitive if we need to. And I know that that's reflective of many of you in our community. So, what we're here, why we're here today, is to describe the next journey for Top Shelf, and that would be Nick's journey, honestly, throughout the rest of the season and the regionals that we have planned. So, but before we dive into that, Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself for those who aren't as familiar with who you are?
Yeah. If you've played Riftbound at Top Shelf, you've probably encountered me at some point, whether that was getting cards, if you needed access to some of the harder to find cards. I was always trying to help out with that, or just to play a couple of casual games at a Nexus night. I was big into brewing up some fun and spicy decks here and there, just really trying to participate in the community. I have played Magic for quite a few years. I initially heard about Riftbound when I was getting a little disconnected from Magic as a game. I thought it would be a very, hopefully, fun trading card game kind of experience, fill that void that I was missing while also offering something a little different. And I attended a few release events and I really enjoyed the game. And I started to play it a couple times a week. Most weeks I'm playing about 3 or 4 times, but I know that a lot of the Top Shelf community definitely knows me. I was working with Top Shelf a little bit in the ambassador role, really supporting and trying to push Riftbound in the community. I also was the head judge at that Masters tournament there that I know a lot of our regulars attended and had a great show out and a lot of fun times there. So I've definitely taken a very strong interest in Riftbound and in working with this community, which has been just fantastic. We have the best turnout, I think, in the area, and it's not close. So
yeah, definitely a lot of good feedback with that tournament there, and honestly, super proud of our judge team, and thank you again, Nick, for heading that. It certainly is not some small undertaking to judge an event of that caliber, and I know we're going to have a recap video of that released shortly, if not even before this video is released. So stay tuned for that. And I think to add on to Nick, I think he's also maybe underselling his contributions to the community a lot. He is often the one in Discord that, if someone's saying looking for this because I need to play. Honestly, sometimes he's lent the cards, sometimes he's just given the cards. So super generous, and I think there's many of you who might not be playing today if Nick didn't come in handy. I know actually after this, I think Nick's got a few cards for me because I got to complete my Lilia deck. But if you're in our Discord, Nick is often there chiming in for a variety of reasons. Usually he's there to post his big hit cards because he's always pulling signatures or overnumbered. But in between that, of course, super friendly, helping people with rules, helping people with the cards that they need. And this is what we love about Nick, and honestly excited to have him kind of progress in his journey as a Riftbound player, but also with Top Shelf on the side. So, Nick, that begs the question: what's next? Like, what's this kind of competitive shift to, like, why are you kind of moving from where you are now to kind of like this next phase?
I've always been a naturally competitive person. I have always had a desire and a strive to compete. I know with Magic, I approached the game at first very casually, but I was always the spike in my friend group for my Magic players out there in EDH as I knew it and Commander now, showing my age a little bit there. But I was always the competitive spike player in my casual environment because it's just who I am. I played, a lot of constructed 60 card formats in Magic, which I always took a moderate competitive type of approach where I always wanted to play the B or the C tier, the edge case, the rogue deck type of approach. Nothing ever super serious, but when you're approaching a game like Magic, it's hard to crack into that game at that point. Getting into Riftbound, my approach at first was quite casual. I was coming in, I was always playing off meta, always trying to play a little bit of a different archetype than what might have been normal.
Yeah.
I've never picked up a Kaisa deck. I've never picked up a Draven deck, the really big titans of the format. I always strayed away from. And then at some point, the mentality shifted. I started to perform pretty well on some of those decks, winning a couple skirmishes under my belt with off-meta picks and playing against some very strong local players as well and getting, compliments and feedback. So I thought to myself, if I can do this without intentionally striving to push myself, I wanted to see how far I could go if I really put my mind to it and kind of nurture that competitive spirit. So that's what I'm focusing on here, moving into set 3, Unleashed, going a little more hardcore, going a little more competitive, definitely with the deck choice and the mentality approach.
So definitely reiterate, yes, it's definitely a very kind of polarizing experience. I've matched up against Nick twice myself. Bonus points if you know what you were playing those 2 matches.
I was playing a Misfortune aggro deck, and you kicked my butt on Azir. That's the one I remember.
That you were on Rek'Sai.
Rek'Sai.
You were on Rek'Sai on that one.
Yes. Okay.
And then the first one, which was I think it's either our
That
very
was
first Nexus.
Ari
That was
Nex-
Ari.
Yes.
And that's where you pulled your GG Easy Teemo.
First night
So-
at Top Shelf, GG Easy Teemo.
Yeah, I think
1
it
out
was,
of 2.
It was our last round, and
Yes.
and Nick got that GG Easy. So it's very polarizing because Nick has like the mannerisms of a very, very seasoned Magic player, like the way he shuffles his cards and picks it up, and the ticks and tapping the runes and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get cooked, right? And so when Nick told me that he's kind of shifted gears and he's no longer playing like the Rek'Sai and the Ari and like kind of like the tier 2, tier 3 decks and more focusing on tier 1, I would say, not exactly pure like meta. Although if we look at the recent Sydney distributions, like, I don't know, like with so many legends, the distributions are looking quite healthy in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of decks showing out right now. I think ending day 1, we have 4 or 5 different legends that have an undefeated person at the moment, and lots of different unique brews coming up. We saw a lot of really interesting combos that I never would have cooked up that obviously are local kind of only, but with the Dragon Volley Bear combo or the kind of went pseudo infinite, there was a lot of fun stuff seeing there. So, but a lot of healthy variety in Riftbound, which I think is amazing.
Healthy variety. So, obviously locals versus regionals is a very, very different environment, right? And there's people who go to regionals for different reasons. Tell us what your journey at regionals, what's sort of that path for you, and where specifically are you planning on going?
Yeah, so my plan for the next 2026 roadmap, I'm going to be a competitor in Vancouver, coming up here at the end of May. I've locked in my ticket there. I am going there with an approach to try to compete for day 2. At the very least, I would be happy with a day 2 performance for a first regional showing. Then in Hartford, I, as of right now, have not secured a play ticket. However, I will be judging, so I do get some experience. I'll get some connection and some opportunity there to see that RC from another perspective, which can still definitely be valuable. And I know my insight as a judge definitely gives me some level of advantage as a player as well. There's a level of input there. And then I am going to be also attending at Barcelona and Los Angeles.
Perfect. So quite the roadmap there, and obviously we see you here at Top Shelf, right? Sometimes maybe twice a week, but Saturdays for sure. I know personally you've shared with me like you're hitting up many spots. So
I play 5 nights a week.
5 nights a week. I know you're headed to a 1K, another 5K, I think you said, right? So that pace has changed quite a bit too, right? So from kind of just casual locals at your local store in Hamilton and Top Shelf, where maybe twice a night, twice a week, right? Why do you think you need to kind of like step it up in that sense to kind of get to where you want to be?
So one of the biggest approaches when it comes to TCGs is recognizing the impact of the behaviors that you're doing when it comes to your practice. So if I can go to a local Nexus night and very confidently sit down at a 3-0 pace, not much challenge being presented there,
Yep.
that's not going to grow me as a player. So I found myself much more actively seeking out much more competitive, high stakes environments because people are going to approach that with a very different mentality than a casual Nexus night. So the casual Nexus night reps are very good when it comes to automating some of the processes. So you're saving some of that brain power when you are at a competitive event. However, getting into those 5Ks, those 2Ks, those events where there is prizing on the line and people are coming in with the best decks, you're playing against the best players, something even a cut above a local skirmish. Those are the types of reps that I am much more actively seeking out with my approach to my time being spent playing Riftbound.
And that's honestly that you shared that perspective, right? Because it's, you could, most people could say, oh, going to like a very, very casual locals, there's no value in that. But clearly, always seeking that opportunity of where can you learn to improve. And I love the example of like automating, right? Like so that it's automatic, you're kind of learning your decks, but then realizing that you need more than that sometimes. And so that's when you hit sort of the higher level competitions. And then, it's almost like in those instances you want to lose a little bit because I feel like when you lose, you learn the most. I certainly learned a lot when I faced your Ari in the first night. And so I think like that's going to be pretty interesting to see, you progress in that standpoint. It's Nick's agent calling.
She keeps me busy.
Yeah. So Nick, honestly, I've personally seen quite the 180 in terms of like your approach, with Riftbound in general. I knew you've cleared a lot of sort of like personal and other hobbies out of the way. Mm-hmm. Certainly put on that mantle of Riftbound, and we're super excited to seeing you go through this journey. Mm-hmm. I know it's not easy, right? Because you're traveling to 4 different locations. Yeah. Right, in a relative, that's like over 4 months, 4 or 5 months. So a very short amount of time, and between that, you're filling in the locals. So, a lot of people may be asking like, what's the goal? What's the purpose? I'll kind of start off, and then we can cap off with your answer. So honestly, for our goal is I want this to sort of show our community that we love to invest in people who are invested with us, right? Like Nick has showed tremendous, support for Top Shelf and for everyone within the community. You can all likely agree with that. And so when an opportunity came up, I don't even know how this conversation started. It happened very, very fluidly.
Slid into the DM.
Right. But we've been known to do this, right? And I know, even one of your close friends, Max, from our Warhammer community, like he knows that we've supported other players from other communities as well. And that's something that we always do, because we feel like that's what it really means to build a thriving and flourishing TCG. And with Riftbound being so new, we definitely want to do our part. According to UVS and Riot, we are. That's why they called us, and they wanted to hear our feedback. And so we want to continue supporting that. The ultimate goal for this, honestly, very, very low stakes. We almost want to have this as a come follow Top Shelf and Nick as we go to regionals and see what that experience is, right? And, whatever the outcome is, that's fine. But we're happy to send Nick here to specifically Vegas. Sorry, I keep on saying Vegas. LA and Barcelona, right? At least fly him there. And, kind of alleviate that and let that be a message to the community that, if there's something that you feel like you could be a bigger part of, always feel free to reach out to us, let us know. But more importantly, like that's our goal. Nick, what is your goal?
My goal is just to push myself and see how far I can make it up. I mean, day 2 is where I'm looking to benchmark myself, get that maybe top 128, top 64 longer term. but just continue to grow and see how far I can get into Riftbound. Riftbound has a very unique approach. Even at a hardcore event like a regional, you'll still find a lot of people doing things like the metal card side quest. So in a game like Magic, where there are so many combinations, it is the world's most complicated game. When you go to a constructed format, you have a better idea of what you're going to expect. There's usually the top dog decks that you need to compete against. With Riftbound, you have the metal card side quest people. You have the people that are playing a champion that they like in the League of Legends game. And now you are sitting down with your tier 1, tier 0 deck that's teched to beat all the other tier 0 decks, and you don't have an answer to the Ivern that's pumping out 2 birds every turn in front of you. So it's a different approach to it, and having that just encyclopedia of knowledge and how to approach the game is something that I'm trying to continue to focus on. My time primarily is spent studying and playtesting. When I sit down for a night on TCG Arena, just matchmaking, anything less than a 90% win rate is something I need to work on. That's my benchmark most nights when I'm doing a night of playtesting against random people. And then you have your much more active approach with playtesting groups, people who you know are quite strong. You're talking through your lines, you're talking through your turns. So my goal at the end of the day is to see how far I can go in a regional environment. I have 3 ready, set up, and going to be attending. And so hopefully every time I go to one, I do a little better than the last one. If that's the momentum, then I'm happy with that.
And that's a little bit into the psyche of success. I feel that's completely echoed here. Pushing yourself personally, right, wherever that may be. Hopefully trend upwards, but at the end of the day, these are kind of uncharted territories, very different than Magic, but similar in some aspects too, right? So I can certainly say that most people at Top Shelf are going to be rooting for you. I certainly am going to be rooting for you. And I'm honestly rooting for Nick, because if you end up going to Worlds, I'm going to tag along with you, and
we'll have a good time. We'll have a good time.
We can certainly celebrate there. But all in all, super excited, Nick, to see your journey. As part of this series, we are going to be releasing some recap videos for Vancouver,
Yes.
and for Hartford, for LA.
You got it.
Not Vegas. And Barcelona. I think that would be very cool. Almost like kind of like follow Nick and a vlog style, so you can kind of be like, oh, I wonder how it is going to a regional in Europe. Like, how is it different than going to one in the US versus one in Canada, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So super excited. Stay tuned. This is an exciting series, and we can't wait to see what's next.
Absolutely, Colin. Thank you.
Perfect, man. Thanks a lot.